Now, as we start to get into some of the more specifics of pay-per-click, I want to hit a couple of terms to make sure that we're all familiar with the language that's used in the reporting of pay-per-click. One of those terms is impression. So impression is simply a measure of the number of times an ad has appeared on someone's page. So every time someone does a search and your ad showed up, that's considered an impression. Does it mean the person actually looked at your ad? Well, not necessarily, but at least it was on the page, and the systems track that. They also track how many times someone clicks on your ad. So an ad might show 1,000 times, maybe 10 people click on that ad. That would be considered a 1% click-through rate. If the ad shows 100 times, one person clicks, that's a 1% click-through rate. Standards kind of across the board in click-through rates for Google at least has some data reported around this, are about 1.5%, about 1.25 to 1.5% of the ads that show actually get clicked on. So that would be a 1.5% click-through rate. A well-tailored campaign, you can actually see some ads getting upwards of 5% or even 10% click-through rate when they're very, very specific and targeted to particular searchers. But click-through rate is one thing that we see reported. And another one that takes a bit more work to get set up is something called conversion rate. The conversion rate is a measure of the number of people that actually enroll in a program or take some action that you consider to be a conversion compared to the number of people that ended up on your website because they clicked. So if the ad shows 100,000 times and 1,000 people click on it, get a 1% click-through rate, 1,000 people end up on your website, and if 10 of those people end up enrolling, then you've got a 1% conversion rate. Okay, and that's another thing that we look at carefully in pay-per-click because obviously you're paying money for every single person that ends up on your website, and if it's costing you $1.50 per person to get them to your site, and then only 1% of those people end up enrolling in your program, it can get very expensive in advertising to get that enrollment. Because you'd have to get 100 people, so it would cost you $150 in pay-per-click marketing if you have a 1% conversion rate to get one registration. Now, if that registration is for a $5,000 certificate program, that might be justified. But if that registration is for a $150 personal enrichment class, you can't spend $150 in marketing to get $150 in income. So being able to track that conversion rate helps you determine not only are people interested in your ad and clicking to visit your site, but are they actually becoming customers, and is it a good use of money? Is there a good ROI there? One of the other things we have to get our minds around with pay-per-click marketing is how do the systems determine which ads display where? And the formula is getting a bit more complicated as the search engines mature this marketing channel. But basically, you can think about the way the search engines determine where to rank your ad compared to other people that are bidding on the same terms is based on this formula. Your bid amount, so you might be willing to bid $2 a click, times your click-through rate. Let's say your click-through rate is 2%, that would give you, say, a rank value of 4. Now I come along and I say, I'm willing to bid $3 per click because I've got deep pockets, but maybe my ads aren't as well crafted, or maybe my institution is not as well known as yours. For whatever reason, people are only clicking on my ad 1% of the time, which means I get a rank value of 3. Now, in the pay-per-click systems, this would mean that your ad would actually appear above mine in the list of ads, even though I'm willing to pay more money. And I always like to point out that this is not an altruistic thing on the search engine's part. They would rather have more money, but this actually is a way, it benefits good advertisers and it benefits the search engines, because the search engines know they're going to get twice as many people clicking on that $2 ad as they are clicking on the $3 ad. So they actually, out of every 100 people that do a search, they're going to make $4, as opposed to if they put my ad first, they're going to only make $3. So the search engines make more money from this formula, but it also serves to reward people who are creating really effective ads that get a higher click-through rate. So it's to your advantage to spend some time and craft your ads very, very carefully and to continue to try to tweak them and improve them to get that click-through rate up, because it gets your ads higher on the page without you having to bid as much money. Now, speaking of ads, this is what a pay-per-click ad looks like. They're text ads. We saw them on the previous screenshot that I had. But they consist of essentially 4 parts and then this little extra that I'll talk about. Each pay-per-click ad has a 25-character title and then 2 description lines that can be up to 35 characters each. And then finally, they have what's called a display URL. And the display URL can also be up to 35 characters. It has to include your organization's domain name, but it doesn't have to have the exact page that people are going to go to if they click on the ad. So as you can see down below, this is the screenshot of what you'd actually use to build the ad. You type in the headline or the title, the description, second description, the display URL, and then you actually get to add also a destination URL that the people seeing your ad never see, but that's where they actually end up if they click on the ad itself. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to kind of hide really ugly looking URLs if you have a dynamic website that has those really long character strings. You can give people something that's more attractive, more engaging. The extra perk that you see there is showing up because the person searching for that ad is located in Atlanta, Georgia, and the advertiser, in this case Emory University, is also located in Atlanta, Georgia, and so the Google system at least throws this little extra on there that maybe entices people or makes people slightly more likely to click on that ad since it's a local advertiser and they're doing a local search. So that's where that shows up. That's not something that you get to control. That's done just automatically by the search engine itself. Okay. The organization. So how are the pay-per-click accounts organized? This is a very high level, very simplified perspective on it. But at the highest level within a pay-per-click account, you can create what are called campaigns. Okay. And you'll see slight variations on the terminology and actually the implementation of this across the 3 main systems, but this is accurate in Google and pretty accurate for the way Yahoo works. Under an account, you can create 1 or more campaigns. Usually campaigns are focused on a pretty broad subject area. So you might have a campaign called computer training classes, or you might have a campaign called personal enrichment offerings. Then within that campaign, you can create 1 or more ad groups. And some campaigns might have 15 or 20 ad groups. Others might have just 1 or 2. The ad group allows you to further subdivide the campaign. So if your campaign was personal enrichment, you might have an ad group named language classes. Or you might even get more specific and have an ad group named Spanish classes, another ad group named French classes, and then another one named wine tasting, another one named dance courses, etc. Each ad group contains several things. The ad group contains a list of keywords, the bids for those keywords, and then it also contains the ads that would appear when someone does a search for one of the keywords within that ad group. So, for example, to go back to the Spanish ad group example, you might have a keyword of Spanish classes. So that phrase could be one of your keywords. You might bid $1 whenever someone for your ad to appear, and then you would have 1 or more ads in there that would show up whenever someone does that search for Spanish classes. But then you might not just limit it to the keyword Spanish classes. You might have Spanish classes, Spanish courses, Spanish education, Spanish language classes, and so on and so forth. You could have a list of 20, 30, 40 variations on that idea of Spanish education, all under that 1 ad group. You might also have 2 or 3 different ads. And we'll talk about the idea of optimizing your ads by testing several against each other, but you might come up with 1 ad that has a title that says Spanish classes, another one that says Learn Spanish Now, etc., and then see which ad gets the highest click-through rate after you let them run for a while.